Getting there.
Wokeness. Woke. Do you watch that GB News? Have you watched GB UK?
I'll ask about it after this. Let's go live. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Only had one today. Sorry about yesterday. My kind of like StreamYard and everything went down, and I was having problems. So there you go. Anyway, so how are you?
I'm good. Everything's good. Yeah, I'm good. I look after my mum, so that's the most important thing. But I do my writing and going in the studio and all that kind of stuff. But I am a big news watcher.
Oh yeah. So what you said to me earlier about you want to talk about wokeness?
Wokeness, or I call it wokeness anyway. But this whole issue about woke being woke, I don't know how much people know about this or listen to it. I know it's on GB UK, isn't it? The new news channel that is on now, and it's actually on now. I think this guy called Andrew Doyle, who I find very amusing. They have comedians on, and they talk about all these political things like transgender and all that kind of stuff, and a lot of the stuff about woke. And woke came out from the American civil rights movement in the 60s, and it's kind of American slang for being awakened, or we might say enlightened, having an enlightened view about things. So we're woke, to be woke. And it was principally looking at realizing the structures that create racism, which I don't doubt for a moment is true. There is obviously racism in the world, and I don't think anyone would deny that. But it's a continual looking for aspects of people's thinking that seem to suggest that they are in some way biased or racist or whatever you want to call it against particular segments of society. And this guy Andrew Doyle on GB News is, very funny about it, although also very concerned, because you've had all these statues pulled down, haven't you? For example, in terms of that guy Colton, was it in Bristol? Because I remember the Colton Hall is famous for having music on. That's what was famous to me, and it turned out that he was a slaver way back in the day, over 200 years ago now. And this whole woke movement, and he was talking just now, well, I knew about it, but this non-criminal hate incidents and stuff like this. And I must say that I came across it first when I went to Southampton University in 1994 to 1996-7, and I come from a business background, and I mean, we don't have political correctness, and I think we would call it political correctness, and in America they call it woke. And in fact, I wrote after my experience at Southampton University, I wrote this book called 2084. It's a novella. It's only a short, it's a novella is 30,000 words. I believe in keeping it short, but it's the extent to which the culture or the establishment, or maybe the government, we should call it. And when I say government, I don't mean Boris and the executive. I mean Whitehall and the local authorities. That is what the government is, and the extent to which the government, the bureaucracy, tries to control what we say and what we do. And I think obviously that's come up a lot in the pandemic. And I was just fascinated to the extent to which the local authority, and I mean, I'm engaged in this as a sort of battle. It's actually going to court, so to some extent it's sub judice, so I can't say too much about things about it. But the extent to which what we think is coming into question, particularly the extent to which jokes are being censored. You know, that if you make a joke, this is not considered what in 1984 George Orwell would be sort of right think or something like that. And the extent to which right think is slowly coming into us. Well, I wouldn't even say it's slowly now. You know, that, for example, I was speaking to somebody from the local authority who said that talking to people on Facebook isn't a particularly good thing. And I mean, I don't know how many teachers and people who work in the local authority, and by the local authority, I mean the CPS, the police, the NHS, all of the parts of our structures that are people are receiving public money. And so they're effectively corporate workers, or it's a corporate environment. And the extent to which they are using their theories about what they do in their corporations, in their corporate world, and they're extending it into the public or the private world, if you like. And the real disputes that I'm having with them about what you're supposed to think and what you're supposed to say. And it seems to be expanding. I mean, if you listen to, I mean, they're burning books in Canada, apparently, which contain the wrong kind of historical views about, you know, for example, decolonizing history, I think is in Scotland, they're talking about now. That it's absolutely extraordinary to the extent to which these people, and they tend to be corporate workers, so they're not, I mean, I have many people who are kind enough to help me out. I don't like calling people employees. I call them people that help me, you know, colleagues. But people who are self-employed seem to have a much more broad view of the world. Whereas that you come up against these corporate or local authority workers and they have very narrow views about what kind of language is acceptable. So, for example, take the issue of a duty of care. Now, I don't know if anybody's seen a film called Worth, and it's all about the when 9/11 happened, so it's topical. When 9/11 happened, all these people were going to sue the airlines for damages because it was the airlines that allowed these people to get off. So if you watch this film, it's all about this lawyer who had to work out how much money they were entitled to ask for. And so they wanted to work it out before it turned to lawsuits so that they would save all these companies going bust. And what's absolutely clear is this lawyer, who is played by Michael Keaton, and in all fairness, the guy that I heard about it on the news, one of the news channels, I don't know what, who actually I learned was the guy that Michael Keaton was playing. So, and basically this lawyer who Michael Keaton was playing had absolutely no idea what a duty of care was. He didn't understand that people had suffered. And this is my experience of people working in local authorities and corporate bodies. They don't know what a duty of care. And the film was basically about how this guy suddenly realized, and it's a kind of moral story, you know, this guy has this awakening, you know, he became woke, if you like, and he realized that these were just human beings and that they had suffered and they were entitled to a fair settlement. But he started off by saying, well, CEOs should get more than people that did the cleaning and all this kind of stuff. And it seems to me that people who work in these corporate bodies, which include not just, I mean, my book is 2084 is where, well, if you look at 1984, it's about the government, you know, erasing history and, you know, all this kind of thing. But what you're seeing is actually happening is that these people are trying to erase history. They're trying to take down statues. I mean, never mind the fact that the British are the people that banned slavery. They're trying to take down all these statues and trying to create this new world.
Are you trying to say, don't leave the statues alone?
Well, I wouldn't say that exactly, because, for example, I found it, and I find it quite shocking that, for example, Robert E. Lee, the leader of the Confederate Army in the American Civil War, had a statue to him. You know, I find that quite incredible that anybody would have put it up in the first place. But I certainly wouldn't rip it down. I think they did it in a more civilized fashion. It was about a month ago that they did it. But certainly, you can't just erase history. That's what I would say. You can't just knock things down and pretend they never happened, because as I forget who it was who said, those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. I mean, you know, you can put him in a museum, but putting things down in a sort of chaotic way, I think is, I mean, a new one is apparently on the Danish royal coach, which is made of gold and all that. There's an image of slaves, and they want to destroy the coach because it's obviously not politically correct. Whereas, you know, all this attempt to destroy things is just like the Nazis burning books. If you just erase everything, like in 1984, and it's like the old joke is that some people didn't take the book 1984 as a warning; they took it as a method. And you're actually starting to see it happen. And it seems to me personally that it's coming from the local authorities. So that in the old days, if you were a Marxist, you'd get a job in schools and universities. That's where you'd get a job because it's a corporate body. You know, you get your money from the government, which is what Marxists want, or socialists. They want to work for the government. That's what they don't believe in, private enterprise or markets. And what you're seeing is that they're turning up in the local authorities now. And so they're making decisions about you shouldn't talk to people on Facebook. So you shouldn't message people on Facebook. For example, this person was saying, you know, what? I use Facebook all the time. I mean, all the guys that I work with and my friends and everybody else, except people who work in the local authority who you have to use email with. Now, I can see, for example, that Facebook isn't secure. I mean, it's not very secure, but then, you know, I don't say anything that is in the slightest bit for me to worry. You know, I'm just saying I'll see you on Tuesday at 11 o'clock in the studio or whatever it is.
Now, what do you think about this show? I've read something just now and it says nowadays woke has become a buzzword for right-wing hate preachers.
Well, what they were saying was that it's become a term of abuse for people on the right, of the left, so that it tends to be left-wing people, if you want, who are woke or politically correct. And so the way that the term politically correct became a word of abuse, if you like, so woke has become a term of abuse. So, I mean, there may be, I mean, it depends what you mean by far right, because right-wingers, and I certainly am a right-winger in that sense, I believe in individual freedom and freedom of expression. I mean, that's what...
yeah, but should we all have that, a right to speak?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's this whole argument about this chubby somebody, the comedian. I mean, Manning, what was his name? Somebody Manning.
Bernard
Manning, yeah, people who objected to his sense of humour, not my sense of humour, I have to say. But the point about English society is that we laugh at ourselves, we mock ourselves. That's what I love that programme, Mock the Week. We mock ourselves. I think Dad's Army was the biggest mockery of one of the most powerful countries in the world. We love mocking ourselves. I mean, it's true, we mock Scousers. We mock, I mean, I'm frequently mocked as being a posh git. You know, so, you know, we mock I mean, at Southampton University, that's what my cognitive psychology tutor told me, that the behaviourists were calling me. They were calling me the posh git. So the behaviourists who are certainly the woke set don't have any problem mocking people they don't like. So, I mean, mocking people you don't like is what we do. I mean, I think it's just part of English society, or mocking people just for the sake of it. I mean, is there something wrong with mocking people? Well, the argument of the woke lot is that you should punch up and not punch down, if you heard that phrase. So it's all right to mock the Queen, but it's not right to mock people of colour, or you know, disabled people and such like. Which, I mean, I wouldn't be inclined to mock people who are vulnerable. I mean, I guess that's true. But just laughing or joking, because I noticed on my Facebook newsfeed, we've got back to joking. All through the pandemic, joking virtually stopped, you know. And I mean, I am a joker. Personally, I'm a joker. So, you know, anything I say could be interpreted as unwoke, or because I just, you know, I'm a happy guy and I like to laugh. But I mean, I always treat people with the duty of care. I mean, which is more than it can be said, for example, from local authorities. And I mean, I've spoken to a lot of people about it.
See, the trouble is, though, do you find yourself, there's something about you seem to have something against the local authority.
Yeah, I've taken them to court.
You know, and the trouble is, it's kind of, it's kind of like it's getting to your head about it, and kind of, what can I say? You know, you're kind of like eager to you know, to kind of like to have a go at them and to get them done. Is that right?
Well, yeah, well, if you want, yes, because if I don't think they're acting with the duty of care, which they don't, then I'm entitled to say so. You can't slander an organisation. So you can't, I mean, people mock the royal family.
Right.
There are Republicans that hate the royal family. I mean, I remember a time in the 80s, well, even now I see on my Facebook, you know, people refer to the bloody Tories, for example.
Yeah.
So you know, you can't,
So
but I mean,
may I ask in your case, right? Who are you taking to court?
The court. I'm actually taking the court, the Crown Court, the Magistrates Court, the local authority, or Bournemouth BCP, as they call Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole Council, and the CPS.
Right. Okay.
Under judicial review.
What's that for?
They claim comments that I made in a message I sent to one of my former employees was harassment.
Right. Okay. I wasn't. What I'm trying to do, see, the trouble with me is like I'm kind of like open-minded what I say, and many people don't like me, you know, when I come out with any questions. But what I'm trying to say to you is this: that every one of us we can do what we want, but free speech, and there's a lot of stigma out there. Okay, and the trouble is, if you're taking these people to court, what do you want? What do you want done?
Well, it's up to the judicial review to decide. I mean, I don't like behaviourism. I don't like corporations. I really don't. I think corporations are the major source of problems that we're having because they've created political correctness, and the local authority is just another corporation.
But if that was the case, why don't you kind of like become an MP or kind of you know?
I can't. I haven't got time. I've got to look after my mother, and I've got businesses to run. I wouldn't want to be an MP.
Right. Okay.
No,
I can understand that, but what I'm trying to say, you know, a lot of people will say, you know, if you've got something against these authorities, you know, you could be in a position to kind of do something.
Well, that's what I'm doing. That's how you do it. You do it through the law. And what the local authority and corporations and behaviourists, I mean, I believe in the duty of care and free speech. And the local authorities are just ignoring. They don't even, as I said about this lawyer, he's a lawyer. He should know what a duty of care is.
Yeah.
And these people don't even know. In fact, for those that might have seen it, Paul Gambaccini, he had those ridiculous accusations made about him. And I don't like repeating ridiculous accusations. But he said he thought that the Metropolitan Police were either sadistic or stupid or both. And I think he might be right. I think some of these people working in these corporate bodies where nobody owns them, they're all employees. They seem to have a sadistic tendency that they actually enjoy causing people problems. That's what I think. They're actually using their statutory powers to attack people that they just don't like. That's what I think. And I think a lot of other people, if you watch Andrew Doyle show, I beg your pardon, or listen to Paul Gammaccini, look what they did to Cliff Richard. I mean, that was completely wrong. Why did they do that? Look, they did it to Edward Heath and Lord Bramall and Lord Britain. I mean, it isn't even just small people they're going for. They're actually making completely unfounded accusations against people they just don't seem to have any respect for. And of course, they're not allowed to do that because you've got to have a duty of care. And I mean, 50% of CPS prosecutions fail. 50% of the cases, and I represent, and they've brought 6 cases against me now, of which, 4 technically, of which 3 have failed, and they've got started a new one on the basis of absolutely no evidence whatsoever. How do they get away with it? You know, I was detained unlawfully for 28 days on no evidence. How do they do it? How do they get away with it? That's what I'd like to know. And I think that this court case, sorry, that's my phone going off. With this court case, I'm trying to establish in court, how can you bring a case against somebody with no evidence?
The trouble is, sir, I can see your point. They did that to me a while back. And, you know, and the trouble is, they can easily, what they do is they usually kind of like, they arrest you, then they kind of like, you know, they do their statements and stuff. The CPS to make a decision. And the trouble is afterwards, when you get arrested, you know, you feel like, hang on for a minute, why should I, you know, you feel horrible, don't you? You know, you feel.
I have to say, from my point of view, there are 2 things that play into my particular personality. One is that my grandparents, one injunction they placed on me, because they'd been through 2 world wars, and it's fighting basically the same people, the Nazis who were the Prussians. They said, if somebody asks you to do something that's wrong, don't do it. And if you see somebody doing something wrong, do something about it. That's what they told me to do, and I accept that. And the second is that I went to St Albans School, and St Albans in Hertfordshire, in the grounds, St Albans School's in the grounds of the cathedral, and that's where Magna Carta was written. And we had it sort of not inculcated, that's the wrong word, but we had it driven into us about the importance of Magna Carta and the importance of law and the importance of justice. And I just can't help myself. If they do something that is wrong, if somebody does something, particularly the authorities, because I mean, I'm a big fan of 1984 and Orwell. In fact, Brave New World by Huxley is actually more appropriate at this time. It's a better example. You know, you've just got to question these people. That's the whole point. That's the subject.
Do you think it's wrong? Do you think it's wrong then? Like said about Facebook, you go on Facebook quite a bit. I go on Facebook like quite a bit to get my guests and message them. Do you think it's wrong when you see people on Facebook who are being chased, pedophiles, say, when these pedophiles come on, and they are being quizzed by these people who are not in authority? They're just people who say they are kind of like, what can I say, pedophile hunters, say.
Yeah.
What do you think about all that?
Yeah, I saw a program about it. Well, you can make a citizen's arrest, but I mean, it is really from better to inform the police. I think that the hunters would say, well, you tell the police and often they don't do anything about it. I mean, for example, I mean, one thing is, I don't tell them, I mean, I do say it more, but I was the one, me personally, was the one who discovered the paedophile ring in Top of the Pops. It was me. I found out about it. It was a guy called Chris Denning, who was a DJ. And I was signed to him for publishing. I only went there with a friend, but every time I went there, he had young kids there. And those of you who want to look it up will find out the story. And he was arrested the next week. And I don't think I made myself very popular with the record company for doing it. But then what was done about it? It took 12 years to find Jonathan King, and then they never got Jimmy Savile, did they? Because he bribed everyone. So you have to weigh it up.
They got him in the end, though, didn't they?
Well, that's my point about the English law. Sometimes it can seem to be taking a long time, but you get there in the end. Because it's not the first time the CPS have made false allegations against me. I mean, they accused me of being a drug dealer called Smitty. Yeah. Then they accused me of, that was 2001. Then in 2006, they accused me of being a money launderer. The judge ordered the jury to acquit. There was no evidence at all that I was a money launderer. Then they accused me of assaulting my mother. That went to court. That didn't even get to court because the judge said there was no case to answer. My mother already had dementia in 2007, and she, anybody who knows anyone with dementia, and she phoned up the police. The CPS wanted to prosecute. Why would they want to prosecute me? On what basis would they do it? Then there was anybody who's Googled me will know there's a court case. You can Google Robert Luther Smith, and it says Bournemouth man denies stalking Christchurch waitress. Well, I would do, because I didn't. And they took it to court, and when they got in court, they admitted it hadn't happened. And then they tried to say it was harassment, and in the end, the case collapsed because it was just completely untrue. And there's no sanction taken against the CPS for bringing these false allegations against people. I mean, I think that Paul Gambaccini and the others have had compensation, which is what I guess I'm aiming at in the end. I mean, I've already taken Bournemouth Council to court because they sent some woman round. I've got the letter. I've posted it on my Facebook page. They sent this woman round to push my buttons until I flipped. I recognised there was something wrong. She was behaving strangely. I got my medical records. Took me a while on Freedom of Information. It was about 500 pages thick. I went through, and finally I got the email where the doctor Brewer down the road emailed her to tell her to come round here. It was just to treat. I don't think they like men or people looking after their mothers at home. They want to get them in care homes or something. So this woman was told to come round and push my buttons. And in fact, they do that frequently.
You know what? My dad's in his 80s now. And I've always said to him, I said to my wife and to his carer, I said, I will never put my dad into a nursing home.
No, never. And in fact, from what I understand, that the new system that Boris is bringing in is that they're going to pay for house-to-house care like we have here. So they're going to pay that what you're going to get. So they don't want to pay for residential care. They should keep people. I mean, I'm looking after my mum. Why should women or men be in care homes? Why can't they live with their family? Obviously there are lots of issues arising from that, but you don't want people going into social care. The average length of stay, excuse me, is 18 months because they die after 18 months because they don't get the kind of care. My mum likes black coffee, 1 sugar. She likes it, none of this Nesquik stuff or whatever, Nescafe. She likes real coffee. She likes particular kinds of food. She likes stuff the particular ways. That's what's keeping her going because I know what she likes. And that's what you should do. You hand them over to the social service. And my grandmother didn't trust the social. This goes back, you just don't get proper care. But look what happened to those autistic people. I mean, you must have heard that news story about the treatment the autistic kids got. I mean, that was the psychiatrist's responsibility. They shouldn't have allowed that kind of a treatment, but they couldn't care less because they don't understand what a duty of care is. It means treating people nicely.
Yeah. And with respect, yeah.
And with respect, and they simply don't. I mean, because of John Paul and my mother, I've dealt with so many people in the local authority of all sorts, and
but
they don't.
If you're taking them to court, or if you're taking them to court, Robert, I bet it's just costing you money.
No, because I can do it myself because I'm a trained lawyer.
Ah, right, okay. So you do it all yourself.
That's right. In fact, I wouldn't trust a criminal lawyer at all, because they don't really work for the defence. They work for the prosecution, so that what they want is convictions. They don't want justice. And I mean, I've talked to loads of people about it, and we all agree they don't want justice. They want convictions, because they don't care in a way, because they get paid anyway. And if the CPS and they believe, this is Findlay and Scott have shown, that when you are charged, all the system believes you must have been charged for a reason. And what's more, as was mentioned, they don't call, for example, they don't call, in harassment cases, they don't call them plaintiffs, they call them victims before you're even convicted.
Yeah,
And in the Pinocchio's case, I had nothing to do with it. I wasn't even there. In fact, I was friendly with this girl, Elisa, and that she was referred to as a victim, even before I was found guilty, which I wasn't. So, I mean, there's something.
So when you were found guilty, what did they charge you with?
I wasn't found guilty.
Oh, you weren't found guilty, right?
No,
okay.
I was acquitted. They dropped the case because it was obvious. They said I was stalking the Pinocchio's restaurant in Christchurch. Anybody knows I wouldn't leave my mother for hanging around a restaurant in Christchurch. I mean, it was so ridiculous, and that's why I think it's politically motivated. Either that, because I'm critical of them. I'm critical of everything. I'm critical of myself. And I think that they don't like people they want people to just bow down in front of them and be frightened, because that's the kind of people that get those kinds of jobs. And gender studies, they do. People who work in the local authorities seem to me have studied gender studies. If I'm white, middle class, and I'm posh, then I must be a woman hater. It just stands to reason in their logic, in their confirmation bias logic, and I think that slowly but surely I am winning. It's sad that it takes so long, but you've got to ask why these people get employed in the first place. It's quite incredible, because they obviously have no concept of what a duty of care is at all, as far as I can tell. They just want to use their power. When I was a kid, they used to call them little Hitlers. That's what they used to say. And now if you say anything like that about them, they'll just cook some story up about you. Just because another thing is that they consider the process itself is punishment in their view, you see, just charging you. Well, what kind of people do that? So I think the whole system has got to be called. Do you know, they even had I've only found out by taking a court case a month or so ago, 6 weeks, I found that the local BCP council had got a secret file on me. It's a load of and it seems, and anything that I say, they seem to misquote to fit what they think they want me to say. It's incredible. It's libelous. I mean, I've got them on that, if nothing else. And it was only because the judge had been given the file and been told it wasn't true. So there's something very weird going on inside the local authorities and corporations. I mean, large bodies. I think it was it the chief police commissioner of Manchester said that it happens in all large, Fahy, F-A-H-E-Y. He said, you can get the clip, he said that it happens in all large organisations. And I think it's true. That's why, I mean, in management, we know all large organisations are toxic. They have office politics. And that's why I don't like these very corporations or large. I come from a small business background. We own the business. We care about our customers. We care about our employees. I care about I need the people who work for me. I need the Prama ladies. I need Dave who does my production. I need the gardener who comes to the garden. I need these people. I don't want them to be treated badly. I want them to be treated well, which I do. And I think I think it's a problem for people like medical consultants, because if you know anything about medical consultants, they are really, for the most part, not all of them, for the most part, they're absolutely authoritarian. And I think that's what we are actually seeing, incredibly enough, is a slow rise of authoritarianism, because there are so many large organizations. Look how big the NHS has got. 40% of the taxes we pay go on the NHS. 40%. I mean, okay, I want the NHS for everybody. Of course I do. But it gets so big that they lose touch with the people that work there. And in fact, I think the reason they've got a shortage of people working there is because people don't want to work there. Because I know what these people are like. I wouldn't work there. I wouldn't work for the local authority in any way, shape or form, because it's a very authoritarian system. And to finish, those who live by the sword die by the sword. And as this guy was saying on Andrew Hoyle, and it's true anyway, is that it's like with the National Socialists or the Soviets or the fascists, they might attack people they don't like, but in the end, they just start stabbing each other in the back, which is why authoritarianism in the end doesn't work, because they use the same nasty methods on each other in the end. So that's why I think it's important to turn to the law and have their behaviour examined by the judges. I have full confidence in judges in England, no question about it. And we'll see what the judge has to say about the local authority keeping a secret file on me.
Yeah, well, there you go. Okay, folks, thank you very much for watching. That was really interesting.
And I hope it annoyed the local authority.
I will send this and put this on Twitter now.
And I'm a joker, and I like to joke.
Well, there you go. Okay, there you go. So please share this if you can, and if anybody goes on to the Parliament or Twitter, can you please share it too? I'm banned from the Parliament Twitter. I'm afraid. Yes, I told them what it is. Why should they go in there on a Wednesday, right? I don't know if you noticed it. They go in there and they sit down, and all of a sudden they're either on their phones.
Who's this?
You know, the MPs. When they're in Parliament, they're on their phones, right? Or they're going asleep. Have you seen that?
Sometimes they're asleep, I do admit. But
yeah, and the trouble is, when you go in there, right? At the end of the day, you're representing you're representing the people, right? So why should you go sleep? Don't start me off. So I said something on there, and I got banned for the 6th time. So okay, folks. Well, please send this video onto Twitter, and let's get them going. Let's get them winded up and everything. I love it. Thank you, Robert. Thank you.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah. But was that? Did you say fascist and Soviet? On the internet?
Yeah.
Man, you mustn't say that. What? They might see you. What?
Well, they do think who I am. That's why they keep taking me to court.
Are they taking you to court?
Yeah.
Who's that? Who's that?
The local authority.
Are they the local authority?
I'm taking them to court now.
I do think they're the local authority. Yeah. It's not personal.
No, hang on.
I got everything. I still don't really know what a fascist is.
What?
A fascist. You always talk about fascist.
Yeah, a fascist is somebody who's not democratic.
Not that. explain it really simple. to
Right.
understand.